All right. So I think we have the stream going. So I have not done or watched or reacted to most official FNaF things lately. I'm gonna let people kind of gather in. Um, I quickly whipped up a little thumbnail based on the kind of amalgamating the two things I feel like I really missed. But uh, so let me notify people this is going. So okay. I think we are good. Oh yeah. Uh, everything I missed. Basically, the topic is everything I missed because I haven't really been on YouTube lately. Um, in terms of I'm doing streams here and there, but those are more just I want to have there be some activity, make it clear that I'm still around. I'm not completely gone. I was just kind of taking a break from stuff. I have been writing stuff in the background. In fact, let me just want to make sure I don't want to show personal information when I pull this up because there's some stuff I've been working on in real life that's like my name and or address might just be in some of this. So let me pull this up and make sure I don't have that visible for whatever reason. But so the stream's going to be dark for a second visual wise. Multiple fronts. The main one was financially. YouTube is not really a big moneymaker for me, so I was kind of between jobs for some of my big YouTube work. And I was kind of experimenting, seeing like I wasn't expecting to live off YouTube. But it was just like one of those. It was a thing I was doing while I was looking for a new job, and I finally got one. So transitioning to the new job took a bit of time. So that was one thing. I had a very small health scare that was mostly just me overreacting to stuff that was very small. Basically, it boils down to constipation. That's all. Use the funny digits on the back of the credit card. So, let me pull up. This is kind of the latest video I've been working on. So this is saying I am working on something. I am working on a video. This is Andrew is Springvani is the current is the document title of this video, but the actual title is going to be hibernating. Andrew hibernating evil. Not that Andrew is the hibernating evil, but it's the subtitle. It's the topic of the video. This is an interesting theory I've been toying with. Visual wise, it's not very far along, but audio wise, the script took a lot of time. There was just a lot of work getting it, because this is a more the first draft I wrote of this script was very literal, like, this is the core theory, done. And I realized, I'm like, is this going to work? YouTube side of things, Andrew is not a popular character topic wise. He's kind of hard to convey to people. I'll talk about Tales games, Frights games, and all that in this moment. He's a hard concept to talk about on YouTube because I would say, theorizing wise, the books have been messed up for a long time when it comes to not only YouTube but the general FNaF sphere. I've almost, if it wasn't so nitpicky and almost mean-spirited sounding, I've almost wanted to make a video titled how the novels hurt theorizing, because I don't just mean like, oh, they created bad ideas or robot kids or whatever. I mean like, they set this precedent to assume continuity was going to be separate with the books moving forward. And because that was not super well clarified for other material, it meant we didn't know how to interpret it, because Frights' closest explanation was, it helps us solve the lore of the games. That was kind of all that Scott ever said about Fazbear Frights. And then then Tales initially had the whole like set to take place in the world of games, but then it was taken back by the time they actually came out. So they just left this confusion of like, what are we supposed to do with it? So I would argue that while the novels, you can argue on a technical level, theorizing wise, were confusing, they made it even more confusing for other stuff moving forward. and we got a lot of division from that. We got a lot of people who really not only like the novels, I mean, a lot of people like the novels, actually. If you've actually read the novels, they're pretty solid, minus a few weird twists that I think could have been handled a bit better or they didn't really need to do. But I think it created this division of people who were constantly looking to the books for answers and made that their Bible for explaining material, and people who wanted to stick to the games because that was what they knew and that's what they were familiar with. And I think the answer probably lies between the two. And I think that has done like a lot of repercussion damage. So when I wrote this video, when I wrote that first draft that was like, this is a theory, I'm like, okay, but while people might know Andrew, they might just think of him as, oh, these people who love the books keep saying he's the vengeful spirit. And I felt like I had to do a bit more justice if I was going to talk about him seriously for a video. And I also realized it wasn't just about saying the theory, it was making a theory that people would want to hear, a theory that people would want to listen to, which is the trickiest thing I think that has been with the books lately. Is a lot of times when I see the books talked about, it is very, once again, like I said, the early script draft, literal. This is what happens here and why, mechanical explanations of things, literal, this happens, that happens. And there's never really, ironically for it being a novel series, there's never really a good explanation of how that fits into the story and what the meaning of these things are. And that's part of why I think we got stuff like Robot Kids was, even MatPat was very like, it's the idea of Gregory's a robot, and that's not a thing story-wise. What's the story behind that? And the big game theory timeline tried to do that with Robot Kids, but it was more focused on the concept than the application. And also missed kind of the points of Robot Kids in the novels, which is the big thing I'm getting at, is like, what was the point of the character? But I wanted for this script outline to make you want Andrew to be canon if he was proven canon. Because I think we're at a point where it's, I would say, I'm not going to say it's more likely that he is than isn't, but I'm saying it's finally at a point where I'm like, I don't feel like I'm wasting time talking about that concept. I don't feel like this is a waste to make a video on this topic. Is Blackbird an agony creature? Probably more or less. Yeah, so oh, by the way, yeah, just a bunch of random assets thrown in here. This is how I make videos now. I very literally just throw together everything I want for a visual. A lot of that's FNaF cards, because the books don't have these visuals. Like, there's no art of Phineas. I made the art of Phineas for this. Hi, T-Dreads, welcome. There's no art of agony. There's no art that isn't like Lady Fizzy or Pinky Pills or some of these characters. If they had art, I used it. There's no art of Andrew. None of it. I had to make all of this. So I just use my FNaF cards. But I'm like, okay, if there's a decent chance he's going to be canon to the games, I want to sell that so people's impression isn't he's the annoying kid who's angry and leaves the story and he just happens to be the vengeful spirit. Because that's how it's sold half the time. That's how he's presented half the time. And I think that's been part of the problem is you can't just say this is the canon story. You have to explain the story. And yeah, it's free advertising for the FNaF card game. Not that there's, I don't profit off the FNaF card game, so. But anyway, So that's the next video I'm working on. Is making decent progress. I was writing a Midnight Motors video, and I made it really far into production on that one. I could probably release a shitty draft of it. What's my thoughts on the Dead by Daylight collab? I haven't seen it yet. That's the whole point of the stream. I haven't seen any. I haven't seen the FNaF trailer. I haven't seen the Dead by Daylight. I haven't seen the docu interview. I'm gonna watch them all today. I was making a Matt Pat Strange's theory, but also once again I realized I'm like, to the Midnight Motors video and the Matt Pat video, I liked those videos. I thought they were funny, and for the Matt Pat video, and I thought the Midnight Motors one was interesting. But at the same time, I also kind of realized I felt like with the Midnight Motors video, I wasn't saying enough new right away. I had some stuff I really liked that I was saying that I wasn't seeing brought up. So maybe I'll finish that one at some point. It doesn't hurt to have it on the shelf, but the thing that killed the game theory video was I realized my mic's firmware was behind update wise, and it meant that video sounded crunchy and kind of weird, and I didn't really notice it when I was editing until I started recording new lines after I updated my mic settings, and then it sounded way different in a very jarring way. Better way, but it made the older audio sound really bad. So I'm like, do I re-record every line in this video? Like, what do I do if the audio is this different? It's going to take you out of the video entirely. Have you ever heard of FNaF Arkham theory? Hi, Trico. The will care description. I don't know. I don't know where we're going with the will care connection stuff. Yeah, and that's the other thing is I kind of just stated stuff in the early version of the Andrew video, and then I realized I'm like, no, I want to express these concepts a bit more. Will care about himself. That's the dude. That's the truth. All right, let's start with the FNaF teaser. How's the sound? That the mango?
Welcome back. Are you ready to start the show? Count with me now. 5, 4.
Con to fix my friends. I really liked what they've been doing with Abby, honestly. She's an interesting way to kind of fit that the one with the connection of the spirits character and his things, because every FNaF version's had it.
Out there, Mike.
2,
Where?
1.
Everywhere.
Hey, that's the mango.
Showtime!
Whose voice is that? Who's?
5. To start the show?
That's not Matthew Lillard's voice. I thought it was the second time with the Showtime. Is that Funtime Freddy or the Toys Freddy's voice? And I love the way Mango looks in this. I hadn't really seen it yet. I mean, I had because I'd seen the images everywhere, but I hadn't seen it in motion yet.
4, 3,
They're out there, Mike.
2,
Where?
1.
So we're doing a festival thing, it looks like, which is kind of interesting. Is this Toy Chica's eyes always been blue? Hold on. Let me pull this up because has her eyes always been? I guess I almost never see her with her eyes because she's always in. She always looks like this. Hold on. She always looks like this. So I never have really seen her with her eyes. That Toy Freddy? It's hard to tell. The toys all have the same feet except for Mangle. By the way, this is something I've noticed about Mangle. It's kind of a funky design quirk. I don't know if I have a good image of this. Mangle has toenails. I don't know if this has ever been like noticed. Yeah, I don't. It's not even in the FNaF TCG render. But Mangle's the only one that has like distinct feet, and it's the core design, but it's got toenails on it instead. Is the difference? Okay, so this is our confirmation of Yellow Rabbit. He has the very distinct. I even let me pull up FCG4 for reference. When I was designing the retrographs, which are kind of an original gang of characters, I adapted like the knuckle glove look for both Spring Bonnie's retrograph design and also in Fredbear's. Because I just really like that trait. It just looks good. It helps sell this as something a person's meant to wear. I did change. The one thing I changed is I gave both Spring Bonnie and Fredbear 4 fingers because that's how actual entertainment costumes tend to be. That's how like the Mickey Mouse costumes tend to be actually. Mangle. I like how Mangle is just presented as this indestructible force in this trailer. That's awesome.
Showtime!
See, that sounds like Matthew Lillard.
Showtime!
That must be Matthew Lillard as Springtrap. No. So the one thing I will say the FNaF trailers haven't done that's kind of disappointed me is the original Scott trailers always had a jump scare at the end. Yeah, I think this is going to be kind of Twisted Ones mixed with FNaF 2, and I think that's a good call. They should put Zangle in FNaF 2. I think Twisted Ones is a good setup for a horror story. I don't think it's executed great, but I will say these guys, the toys in this seem cooler than the toys in the canon, honestly, games. Like this shot in particular reminds me of Pop Goes, where the idea of Pop Go, is that the animatronics aren't capable of hurting people, which is realistic. A lot of animatronics are not strong machines. They are very brittle, like thin wires just meant to move around a costume. So the idea of them using weapons makes sense if they're like the kid-friendly redesigns. I like that idea. This should have been called Five Nights Out of Freddy's. Because we're not at Freddy's anymore, it looks like. I just realized that. We're not at Freddy's. Trying to look for any other shots that are really, because this is one of those. It's kind of just this feels like a design reveal and an action reveal more than anything. I'm trying to glean story out of this. So we got the original Freddy's crew. Foxy's arm tufts, have they always been on the shoulder blade? Also, I just realized Freddy doesn't have his shoulder blades in this design.
Welcome back. Are you ready to start the show?
Cotton candy. So yeah, we're doing like a theater, or not a theater, like a carnival kind of thing. And there is going to be a Freddy's 2 location because we can see them here. Okay. So what's the bit we're doing here? And also, what's with the C in December? Gone to fix my friends.
They're out there, Mike.
We haven't seen the Wizards at all in this too. This single shot, makes Toy Bonnie creepier than he's ever been. Squawks, you need to listen to Jackie's Box. I've listened to Jackie's Box.
Where?
everywhere.
I like how we're getting. I also. God, Mangle. Is this Mangle? Actually, hold up. I know this shot is meant to make it look like it's Mangle. This could be like a withered animatronic though, because Mangle. Okay, no, it's got the weird 3-joint limbs. Never mind, it is Mangle. I thought these were 2 hands wrapped around. I'm like, Mangle doesn't have 2 clean hands. Mangle has like a weird 3-segmented snake arm and then a hand.
Showtime!
Yeah, no, it's definitely Mangle. It just didn't look right for a moment. Dead by Daylight confirms Charlie first. What the hell goes on in Dead by Daylight? That's a great shot. I want to use that as the card art for Springtrap, because I'm assuming I'm going to do Dead by Daylight Springtrap. So, is that it? Is that all we got, a Springtrap? Do you think we'll get a fixed Mangle image in the film? I assume they're going to do at least one poster fixed Mangle. Mainly because they did that for Foxy in the first movie. He calls Akira reach a one night at the Pizzaplex, and it's not 5 nights. Endings don't count. Yeah. I agree. I think I'm trying to think of what. I guess Ultimate Custom Night, which isn't called 5 Nights at Freddy's, doesn't really count. I guess, yes, Akira Reach is the only 5 Nights at Freddy's game that isn't 5 Nights I can think of. There's more, but how do I watch more of it? Where is the more? Oh, someone reporting on the journalist. Where do I watch? Where's the rest of it? Where's the rest of it? At a post? Okay. It's dangerous to look things up on the internet, so. Okay. Springtrap. Is this? What? Who is the source? Okay, Dead by Daylight. This is the official website, it looks like. Okay, let's see. Broadcast. First reflection. Five Nights at Freddy's. Springtrap is coming. Ever since we first revealed that we were cooking up a Five Nights at Freddy's chapter, it became abundantly clear how many of our players were passionate about the franchise. A continuous topper of our most desired license surveys. Yada yada. Well, we're not quite ready to take this pizza entirely out of the oven. We did reveal a little bit of okay, that's what I saw. Legendary outfit. We also premiered the first Legendary outfit chapter, which yeah, I saw a little bit of the Matthew Lillard skin. This it? This is loud. Okay, FNaF X Dead by Daylight.
Hello, PAX. Isn't it awesome to be back here?
It's amazing to be back here. It's nice to see you, even though I don't see quite well. It's nice to see you in person. Also, hi to everybody watching us online. And shout out to all the cosplayer. I've seen some of them. They're amazing. You know, especially Mr. Unknown somewhere there. Amazing. But I don't see anything, so, right?
After.
All right. So, of course, being here is pretty special. And we're here.
I was trying to fast forward a little bit. No, not subtitles. Playback speed. I just want to get to the part where they're talking about Springtrap.
It's perfect that we're here to announce and to reveal a little bit more of our top requested, you know, of all time of the history of Dead by Daylight, the top requested license.
Yeah, so Five Nights at Freddy is our next chapter, as we've said. It is one of those crazy games. It's such an amazing story. They released about 10 years ago, just like we did. It was one of the first little indie horror games. Today, it is a gigantic behemoth of a game and universe, actually. And we are thrilled to have Five Nights at Freddy's universe finally come into the fog.
So, of course, the team has had a blast creating the chapter. It's such an amazing universe to explore. And I just wanted to say really quickly that, you know, we survey our community to know what you want out of licenses and content.
They're repeating
and
a
we
lot of
listen
stuff
to
that's
it.
said here, so I'm just going to let them
Five Nights
go.
at Freddy's has been the top of the list for the longest time. So finally, it's here.
So what are we doing with Five Nights at Freddy's?
Yeah, okay, so let's start and reveal our new killer.
Five Nights at Freddy's.
Let's show that bad boy.
Yeah, this is the real. We saw it. Yeah, Springtrap, no surprise. I want to really, hold on. Let me really digest this art, because I didn't really get to when I threw it in a thumbnail. Some people have noticed, and this is correct, it looks a lot more fleshed out than his usual design art is. Pun absolutely intended, because it looks like there's a lot more skin in his design, a lot more like real gore and stuff, rather than the kind of weird spaghetti sauce he tends to have inside of him. They also, like, really, at least in this art, really gave him a lot of texture on the art, on the assets. Though he's missing his buttons. He's supposed to have 2 buttons here. Or, like, 1 button and kind of a half-destroyed one. God damn it.
For the first time ever, you'll be able to be in the suit. Isn't that amazing? You'll be the killer. You'll be Springtrap.
He will be known as the animatronic in our game.
Absolutely, yes. So the animatronic, today we won't go into the power or the perks.
Oh.
Yeah, we're not revealing a lot, but we'll show some screenshots later, and if you watch closely, you might see something very interesting. We're adding, on top of the killer, a very interesting survivor and killer mechanic that's quite unique to this chapter, that will appear every time you play as Springtrap, or that you face Springtrap. So you might get a clue about this. So obviously,
It'd be really cool if, when you play against Springtrap, he can, like, spring lock someone, and then that player takes over as Springtrap. So you actually start with, like, 5 survivors, and you have to race to be Springtrap. Or something like that. That would be a cool mechanic, I think. This is canon to the lore, by the way. Is that stated anywhere?
obviously, we will reveal more of that in a couple of weeks in another stream. But I want to say that the power and the perks are really authentic to the universe of Five Nights at Freddy's.
Yes. Now, one of the other ways that we like to bring authenticity to the content that we create is with cosmetics, of course. And there are going to be a few really cool ones as we release this. But there's one we absolutely need to talk about today. A legendary outfit for Springtrap that we will have will be taken directly from the movie, and we're going to show a little thing.
Oh, that's good. There's a lot more blood on this design, too.
So,
I mean, I feel like Dead by Daylight's a kind of a Smash Bros. Situation where canon to the lore means they're respecting the canon. I don't think that means it literally affects the lore. Though it would be funny if William's canonical end is that he gets trapped in the fog forever, and the entity is just toying with him.
Of course, you may have noticed on screen there, this is the yellow rabbit.
Yeah, so it's probably canon to the Dead by Daylight lore. It's probably what anything's referring
from
to.
The movie as portrayed by the absolutely talented Matthew Lillard. So it's fine, get it out. Not only are we gonna have his pretty face in the game, but he was nice enough to record all the voiceover for the characters. That's exactly what I said when I heard that.
Yeah. Hold on a sec. I do the stupidest thing ever. The way I get into this thing is I do like an ape thing. So hold on a sec. Ollie, ollie, oxen free. Ollie, ollie, oxen free. Ready or not, here I come.
Probably going to put the filter from the movie over that. I wouldn't be surprised. That would be a really cool touch.
Fun.
He is such a cool
It will
guy.
be interesting to have a lore bio, though. That's actually true. Because usually, if I remember Dead by Daylight pretty well, the lore bios are pretty, it'll probably just say, the iconic killer William Afton returns as Springtrap, and he killed 5 kids or whatever. Who wins, 100 men or 1 gorilla-sized William? That would make William smaller, though. Gorillas are shorter than people. They are bulkier, but they are shorter than people. Well, you're shorter than Springtrap. Springtrap's like 7-8 feet tall.
Guy.
So as you've seen, there is no survivor in this chapter. But, but there is a map. Yeah, thank you. We couldn't do this without, of course, the iconic location of Freddy Fazbear Pizzeria.
Oh, I'll read the article. Just give it a moment. That's a great sign. So it definitely is like a movie. Okay, so since we have a hook outside, that must mean we go in and outside of the pizzeria. Which is cool.
So
this is Dead by Daylight reveal.
Took inspiration from the first game, so most of.
There we go. So yeah, we can see a lot more musculature. Something I was, because I had to do a lot of my own art for stuff like this. I was really torn on stuff for designs like let's bring Electrum. It's a different set. Stuff like how I do wires, I was really torn on. I ended up going mostly with red and blue because it's typically what FNaF has, but I tried to throw in some yellow stuff here and there in my designs. That's Ouroboros. He's a way different design. But it seems like they're really sticking. I don't think Springtrap actually has a lot of red and blue. I like how hunched he feels, though. Also, Springtrap cannot be 5'11" based on this art.
So instead of looking at it through camera, you're actually going to walk in it. And it's filled with Easter eggs, surprises, and of course...
And we even get the Freddy... Okay, I wasn't quite sure if they were going to model the others. I hope there's like a trash pile of Mangle somewhere. I'm not assuming Mangle to move or anything, but like I would love if in the ceiling or something like that, the Mangle's head is just poking around.
Jump scares.
This Freddy sign. I know it's a random thing to focus on, but I'm just looking around like what's all around here. That just feels really... I don't know. Sometimes the FNaF movie the FNaF game props of like what's around a pizzeria doesn't feel that real. This feels real. This feels like this would be here.
And there's also one fantastic... Oh, well, I'll let you react to this a little bit more, I think.
And we got the ball pit. I know it's Dead by Daylight, but it's still really cool seeing a lot of blood and stuff around the FNaF pizzeria. Oh, we got some security breach ball pit balls. Angular.
It is cool. It's an awesome map. The team did great. Can't wait for you to play into it. So there's also something very, very cool, a quality of life feature that we're adding with this chapter. We will have a separate queue where you'll be able to go exclusively in this map.
That's interesting. I don't think that, have they ever done that?
And that's something that's going to be present for every upcoming map in the future also.
Yeah, let
No, the rabbit. Return to the pit.
us know if you actually like the feature, and that's what we'll do. All right.
That'd be cool if every chapter you're allowed to just queue into the current new map.
I mean, if everybody hates it, we'll take it out, but we try to listen, is what I'm saying.
What else?
Well, I think we're actually out of time on this one, so it's okay.
Okay. Well, that's good. Now let's pull up what T-Dread sent me, which is the Epic Games article, which is apparently not good. Bringing the animatronic to life. No, sure, it's supernatural. Let's see what their article is on this, because apparently this is really dumb. Here's what I'm convinced. Both franchises have enormous success, and now people are hooked on Dead by Dead, Incense, Survivor, Killer gameplay. I think it's never Incense, licensed by Dungeons & Dragons, Castlevania. No supernatural, just trailer. What am I looking for here? What am I? I know the article isn't good. The article, but Springtrap is the big bad franchise. It's kind of accurate. So an inventor who turned into a serial killer in a tragic incident following his family. Remember, this is not official. This is just some random jackass writing an article. But apparently this one, because from Epic Games, is given a bit more attention, even if it's not right. Springtrap is a growth test of Athens fusion fresh, its own inventions, the bunny shaped. We don't know if he invented Springtrap or not, honestly. That's never been really clear. I actually have sometimes leaned into that idea with some of my scripts and stuff, but it's not confirmed. While Springtrap is in Intel 3. Admittedly, this is a kind of a Jason thing where, you know, Springtrap is easily the most iconic incarnation of the animatronic archetype in FNaF. In this case, it was sitting down with Scouts. What do we think our fans want? What other fans want? So Springtrap was a no-brainer. There were other options, but he's the darkest. He's the bad guy. I mean, yeah, that's accurate. I mean, this is a quote, so of course it's accurate. Like, Freddy may be the face of the franchise, but Springtrap is not only the kind of big bad, but he is the evil that matters. Yeah, this doesn't hold any weight. This is just someone writing an article because they have to, you know? And they probably just watched a bunch of the game theory videos and were like, that's the timeline. It said, I did a lot of research. I watched literal dozens of hours of the FNaF game himself. Markiplier, playing through the game, taking notes, read all the lore, read all the theories. So, I mean, that does mean they're considering theories and stuff, which is cool. Once again, it's a quote. So, if it's a quote, this information matters. Stream Judge was a big clonking menace, force of nature. He's somehow a sneaky jump scare guy, but he's also kind of a stomping around the halls, empty place kind of works. I figure out what the experience is and how I work that in. This is how I try to work the FNaF TCG too. Yeah, I'm assuming this writer just watched a bunch of map pad and was like, I get the bit. That was my research. It also does kind of have a ChatGPT feel to it, yeah. But this quote about designing stuff, I agree with, where it's like trying to figure out what the feel of something is, and then trying to incorporate that mechanic-wise. Because a lot of times you can't literally transfer a mechanic in. So it's like, what does this thing represent? Need chat GPT to write a Wilk Air Theory video. I'm sure someone's going to do that. Design the map. Is there any other iconic lines we're looking for that? Because a lot of these are just quotes. Noises and vents. Yeah, that's a big thing. Then we're here to scare people. Yeah. Whispering trap the developers behind iconic fast pizza. Once again, if it's just quotes, this is just kind of interesting thing. Fast food restaurant vibe. Does Freddy's really count as fast food? I know pizza, grease, that's associated with fast food. But I guess it kind of is. I guess it kind of counts. I guess agony is nature. I mean, here's the thing. Springtrap is a force of nature. He's a force of unnature. He's, yeah, like highlights. I'm just trying to look for, like, what... Is there anything other than that one line that matters here? I always smoke crack. I know it's yeah, this is just an ad for it being added.
Hey guys.
Now it's the last big one, which is the Daco Steelwool interview. No, that was it. Okay. Other than that, that was a pretty bog standard article. That was, I feel like that's what half articles went down. The Twitter meltdown was funny. That sounds about right.
It's Dorco. I have a very, very special video
Hello,
for you
Dorco.
today. I am so
Let's see what's going
honoured
on.
to be interviewing Steelwool Studios again. This time, I've got Evan with me, and we're going to be talking about Secret of the Mimic. So, yeah, very, very excited. I've been looking forward to this game for so long. We got the trailer a couple months ago, and it looks insane. And everybody's hyped up and so excited for the release in June. So, yeah, I'm excited for this interview. Well, Evan, thank you so much for coming on for
thanks
this.
for having me.
Yeah.
Great.
Hell Neighbor poster. Oh yeah, didn't Steelwool technically do some work on Hell Neighbor? Actually, now that I think about it, there's gonna be a perk called Shadow of the Stand. I don't think that's real, but I really hope.
See you.
Yeah, great to see you as well. I love your posters in the back, by the way, of like the FNaF Hello Neighbor as well.
And this is my Help Wanted one. I mean, that's what I need.
Yeah, you did Help Wanted one, yeah. And Help Wanted 3 as well. But yeah, just want to ask, how's it going? Like, how's everything going so far with Secret of the Mimic and just Steelwool Studios as a whole?
Oh, it's going really great. You know, things are getting all crazy, close to launch. You know, we're in the home stretch. Everyone's working super hard. The team is working incredibly hard to polish things up, and you know, it always gets wild, but it's all coming together, and it's really great to see it. You know, I think we've been doing play testing and stuff, and Trey, you know, the regular sauce, he's been doing his tests, and it's so much fun to watch. He's having such a great time. He's about halfway through the game, and he already says it's his favorite Steelwool game ever. So that makes me feel very happy. But what's funny is
interesting praise already. I know, you know, beta testers are going to say whatever the most hype thing is probably, but yeah. It's interesting that they're like really talking about it. I mean, they're always going to do this, but still, you know, when they were talking about security breach, even though they were trying to sound optimistic and happy in the equivalent interview of this for security breach, there was this kind of energy of like stress in some of their words. They were like, you know, we're a little bit over time and a little bit over budget, but we're really working on it. It's like an almost exact quote from that trailer, but it sounds very different.
He hasn't even gotten to the coolest parts yet. You know, don't tell him though. I want him to be a surprise.
Oh, that is so exciting. I love the regular sauce, and yeah, that's so amazing to hear that it's his favorite Steelwool game. That's
on the question. So, you know, FNaF fan, I'm not even going to try and pronounce the numbers after that, but I'm still confused why Daka doesn't ask important questions like why is Vanny not in the game? Will we ever see her again? I mean, it's set in the 70s. She's not born yet, almost certainly. I'm 99% sure Tales Games isn't true after this video interview. That's interesting. We'll see about that. So it's like, I mean, Janny wouldn't be in this no matter what, even if she wasn't done in the story yet. But I mean, I've another video idea I've been toying with. I haven't even written this yet, but I'm just toying with the ideas right now. It's called like I want to call it something like you're taking the new era for granted for FNaF. I just haven't gotten a good title for it yet. I like having a title because that kind of works as a thesis to work the video back to. Sometimes. And I want to talk about how I think that the entire new cast and the entire new story is actually doing a lot of really cool stuff and just is not getting a lot of credits to it. Watch how it reacts to any continuity questions. That'll be interesting. Are we going to be playing poker here? Oh, and thanks for the $2 also.
I'm so excited to play it. I really am. So what was it like developing this game, like branching out to something completely different that we haven't really seen in FNaF before, like the prequel to everything that we know so far and stuff?
Yeah, you know, I don't want to like spoil anything.
Yeah.
But it has been really interesting to, you know, explore this new setting and in the 70s time period, you know, these new characters with Edwin and maybe the origins of the Mimic, right? You know, it's
so we are confirming Edwin and Mimic. Like, I mean, no shock they was in the trailer, but they are talking pretty casually about him. But they are treating him like we know him already.
It's great because we get this opportunity to explore a side of the FNaF universe that nobody's ever seen before, and I think that's very exciting for us.
That's an interesting line, though. Nobody's ever seen before. Huh. Okay, hold on. Let me... Once again, I don't want to, like, leak information, but let me get, like, a counter going. Okay, so here's my list. We have one for anti-book, nobody's ever seen before, and he could just say never properly. Let me replay that again.
Side of the FNaF universe that nobody's ever seen before, and I think that's very exciting for us.
Yeah.
Oh, and here, let's do one pro. Let's put one pro in, which is one pro, which is Edwin is mentioned casually. It is just treated like you know him. So we are 1 for 1 so far. We'll keep this counter going.
Yeah, I think loads of people are excited as well because I've always wanted a game like just before everything, like before, you know, like a FNaF Origins style game.
I just say it's weird to say nobody's ever seen before if this was just like, I guess books don't count as seeing, but we're taking a very literal counter here. Let's say, you know, this is just going to add up a lot, and I'll wait. So I'm just more collecting talking points.
So yeah, I'm super excited. One thing I wanted to talk about is Ruin. So I know so many people I
mean, you can't see a book. Well, on one hand, you're correct. On the other hand, you by definition have to see a book. Unless you are reading Braille, you have to see a book. I know what you mean, though. I agree.
Positive reaction to Ruin and the vibes of Ruin. Do you guys think you took on those positive reactions from Ruin to put into this new game?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we've always talked about, as we were concepting this game, keeping the tone darker, more similar to Ruin. I will say there's a little bit less linear than Ruin was, but we wanted to keep a lot of the bespoke, really interesting horror elements there, right? The game is much more claustrophobic than some of the games in the past. which
I do feel like they're really reacting to Security Breach and Ruin with this, from what I've kind of seen of the gameplay and what they're talking about here, which makes sense. I think Security Breach was its biggest thing was not that it was too big in terms of scale. Trying to figure out a word this. The game itself is not actually that big. If you really boil down what you're doing in Security Breach, it is not that big. What's weird about Security Breach is its literal size is so huge. There is so much space that doesn't do anything. Skeldark on Breast, you might have missed whatchamacallit, you might have missed stuff like this Dead by Daylight reveal in the FNaF movie 2 trailer reaction, but that's all. It's pretty old stuff. There's nothing. And it's not even feature creep because there's not features. There's just not things. They're just rooms that are there to look cool, and they do look cool. I think the Pizzaplex looks cool. Yeah, wide as an ocean, shallow as a puddle. It's like they made such a believable giant mall entertainment place that was designed around having hundreds upon hundreds of people in it, but also there aren't hundreds of people. And I actually do find that kind of environment creepy in its own way. The idea of having nowhere to run an open environment is creepy, but it's all of it is like that. And it's one of those, like, if you're going to do a game that way, I don't feel like it really nails that in a way. It doesn't feel like I'm constantly running from a threat. It feels like I'm just wandering around this giant place, which is kind of cool, but also, nah.
I think we really liked.
Because when I was at PAX, I played Secret of the Mimic in VR, right? But from the trailer, it looks like it's flat mode. Are you doing both VR and flat mode on launch, or have things changed?
Yeah, we pivoted a little bit. We're launching in flat, Steam and PS5 flat, and we're going to take the VR coming after launch.
Sometime. Oh, that's interesting.
Hey, that's awesome, because I get to play it twice then for videos, so thanks for that.
Exactly. That's why we do it, yeah.
Yeah, because I was worried, like, if both came out at the same time, I was like, okay, what am I going to do first? Am I going to do VR first? Am I going to do flat mode first? So, yeah, that's awesome. I can do both then. That's amazing.
Oh, yeah.
So,
no, this was revealed as a VR game first when it was debuted at PAX. I wasn't at PAX, so I didn't get to experience it, but we knew it's been VR for a bit. But it's interesting that they're releasing flat mode first. I do like that they're doing it this order, though, because that's the weird thing I felt is going to Help Wanted 2 after playing it VR felt like a downgrade when playing it in flat mode and wasn't that interesting. I think upgrading to playing it in VR is going to be a cooler replay experience that's going to be fun to have. It also makes it more accessible and all that. A lot of people can't really run VR, whether they don't have the hardware or don't have the space or whatever. Yeah, this is a better playthrough order, I think, than the original methodology of VR first, then flat mode. That's cool.
Both anyway, but it's a bit easier now if they're releasing at separate times. So yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, as you saw at PAX, the game looks great in VR. It's super scary in VR. It's really, really great. But
I will say VR is one of the smartest things FNaF has ever done. FNaF is so much about looking at the threats of things and putting it all on the scale is so cool. I really liked my Help Wanted 2 playthrough because of that. And that was my first VR experience. I didn't get to play FNaF Help Wanted in VR.
It's very challenging to develop both VR and flat at the same time. I mean, ultimately, these are different mediums, right? They have their strengths and weaknesses, right? The tech and the art and the design. It's challenging to keep both of these tracks, both these trains on the same track, basically, right? So we're separating it out, and hopefully we can provide, the best possible experience for the most number of players, at launch with flat, and then VR coming in soon after.
That's awesome. How carefully are you putting the books in consideration of Secret of the Mimic? So, you know, Tales of the Pizzaplex had a lot of lore about the Mimic and Edwin. Did you take that for this game?
This is the most direct question we've had so far. That's interesting.
Yeah, you know, we've actually been talking about making this game for a long time, and we were developing the game kind of while these books are coming out. So yeah, I will say it's interesting. Again, I won't go into like the books and all of that, but it's interesting to work kind of in dual mediums.
That's awesome.
I feel like you could take that one either way. You say, what this confirms to me though, and this completely crushes whatever the fuck Tom was talking about. The whole idea that they were writing it around, like, Tom was talking about, like, oh, the FNaF, the Tales from the Pizza Box has been released and written since 2019. No. It's a good question of, like, I know he's talking around it kind of, but this confirms that they were making Security Breach first and the books were written on top of that. And this also kind of confirms to me a lot of our errors with Tales are probably caused by just the writing team not communicating with Steel Wool. That might explain stuff like the Mr. Hippo magnet, where Scott just said there was a hippo magnet that causes glitches in the system, and then the writer was just like, oh, okay, it must be a discontinued product if it causes that many problems. I'm not saying we should trust Endom anymore, but the entire whole, like, book claim of, like, they've been written since 2019, I think that's completely killed here. And this, okay, this to me, I don't think it kills Tales games, but it does push me towards soft Tales games. Or whatever we want to call it. The idea of the, like, they're written with everything in mind, but they're also, like, the books are written with the games in mind. The games are not written with the books in mind, is how I'm going to word this. So that's a good answer. I mean, not a good answer. That's a good question, though. I'm glad that was asked.
To take a pit stop because Steel Wool have gave me 2 posters to share during this interview, and I feel like now would be a nice time to do the first one. This is the first poster, and I'm going to show the second poster around the end of the interview, so you guys have to stay tuned and look out for that.
Tales adaptation is what that's called. Well, that seems confirmed to me that whether they're canon or not, that concept that they're an adaptation, it sounds pretty accurate to me. To me, this feels... I've been wanting to call it this for ages, a book Dragon Ball kind of... I don't know what I would call this theory-wise. Dragon Book Z. If you don't know, Dragon Ball has a funky as hell canon. And it's really weird how it's been handled. And it always reminds me of how FNaF's been handled. Did you all see the official design of Edwin? Did we get an official design of Edwin?
So yeah, the first poster that Steel Wool sent me, thank you by the way, Steel Wool, I appreciate it. It is a poster saying locked out. Your data diver is the key. So my first theory looking at that is that data diver has a bunch of keys on the poster as well. I'm guessing it's basically might be a mechanic where you can use the data diver to unlock doors and explore and stuff like that.
You're not far off.
Okay.
I think, yeah.
Tales Book Graphic Novel 3. Did that come out? Is that released yet?
Yeah, absolutely. And it obviously has a more than a passing resemblance to the Faz Wrench.
Yes.
Not unintentional, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I feel like people picked up on that as well on the trailer and stuff too. That
Dragon Ball canon isn't that bad, but it is kind of weird how it's flip-floppies sometimes between what happened and didn't. Like, if you noticed, any of the movies Toriyama wrote himself, if they reference prior material that was in Dragon Ball Super, they're kind of wishy-washy about what happened specifically. They don't get super like, and then this happened, and this happened. They're just like, that Jiren guy was really strong. And that's kind of how they handle it. They aren't super precise.
It's very similar to that. So that's interesting. I love that. So yeah, you did say previously as well that it's less linear than Ruin. So are we going to go? I'm guessing that's more exploration in the factory and stuff. So yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. When we talk about this game, we talk about it in layers, and that applies to both the narrative and the gameplay. There is we call it the golden path, right?
Here, put some of the Tales designs and spoilers and leaks in the server. I'll take a look at it. Because I'm curious what he looks like.
It's the main line that you would go to complete the game. You can follow that path.
Yeah.
How is Edwin described in the books? I can kind of share how I interpreted his description. Because I had to, once again, I had to make art based on what was stated. And so I kind of pieced together loosely from the few times he described. So, gray eyes, brown hair. He's described as gnome-like, with like a small nose and like a mustache, and he's kind of a shorter guy and kind of thinner. So this is the design I came up with, in the pixel art style, and I felt this conveyed like the concept well enough. So this is what I came up with. I'm curious what he looks like in... Oh, okay. So this is... But this is past Edwin, to be clear. This Edwin was drawn... This is the one specifically from the Mimic short story. Okay, this is what people have in the server. Okay. Yeah, okay. It's an alright design. This is older Mimic Edwin. He's like 60 or so there. So, yeah, he could have kind of lost himself a little bit and like had his mustache and all that grow out.
But
wait, we have an official design for Edwin, but not William? I mean, we do have official designs for William. They're just not for the game timeline. It looks so stupid in the graphic novel. Yeah, it looks alright. I think that's being a little harsh. I mean, the graphic novel art just is always only kind of good enough, is how I'll explain most of the art for it. They got the eye color right, which they don't always do. God, I forgot how big Tiger Rock is in the story. That's They gave David a funky haircut. Yeah, sounds about right. I guess I might as well show off the David design while I'm at it. David, I kind of wanted to imply a bit. So, he's supposed to have dark brown eyes. I realized a lot of his description was similar to Gregory. So I kind of wanted to play with the idea that Glitchtrap sought out someone that reminded him of David subconsciously. So I kind of gave him a design that resembles a sort of... I wanted to go for an Earthboundy kind of Ness look mixed with Gregory. So that's what I went for. I didn't want to be too similar, but also enough that it was clear. And then this is the most obscure reference I think I'm ever going to make on a FNaF card. I mean, the game it's referencing isn't even that obscure. It's just how would you know that if you weren't me? Yeah, he's greater-ish is kind of... That's a good way to explain it. That was kind of what I was going for design-wise. Gregory's robot David. Very poorly behaved. He is. Pillar in the background is what gives him the ponytail. What? Oh, okay. So this is our David design. Why is the eye color messed up there? Oh, because it's just lighting. It's weird. Yeah, it's a little tiger. That's an alright. It's a funky haircut, but it's not terrible. I mean... Okay. I realized what's throwing me off about this design. This left hair clump is like a little too big and off-centered. Like his entire hair just needs to be. It would be fine if it was just centered, but it's just like. I will say he doesn't have a lot of wrinkles on his face for 60. The one gripe I have about this design is he doesn't look, aside from the white hair, he doesn't look old enough. Like the core concept of the design is, I don't think is actually that bad.
You don't have to. There's other things to do. There's other stuff to find. I'm really curious to see what people are able to find and how quickly.
Wow.
Yeah.
I don't know who illustrated this one. This book's not out yet.
Yeah, that makes me so excited because I love stuff like that because obviously not going to theorize about it, but like, you know, if you explore different places, you find things that
They did forget his freckles. I specifically put that in his design because I'm like, oh, that's a funny design detail. And I gave him like the kind of Ness Earthbound cheeks while I was at it. They forgot his freckles.
lead to a different ending and stuff. So that is very, very exciting. Oh my god! I'm gonna shut up now because I'm gonna be like, oh, you get to find like something that belongs to William Afton or something that belongs to Edwin, and you get like a see Fred Bear or something. You know what I mean? I'll shut up now. But I'm so excited. When this game comes out, I hope you guys get to see my reaction to stuff like that. I'm gonna go insane.
I love watching the reaction videos. I watch all the streams. Yeah, it's the best.
I'm gonna go absolutely insane if things happen that are in my head right now. How much create?
Yeah, so the reason I did pixel art for the cards like this is because A, it was convenient to do pixel art rather than drawing every single character. Because it's really easy to do the lighting effects I do for all this, and it was easy to create depth and all that. And it was really clear that it's not official art because the FNaF art never looks like this. It's clearly based on the FNaF art. You can recognize it's a reference to that. But, you know, it never exactly looks like this. Other times I repurposed art I already did. So for example, these are all from the FNaF videos I've made, the theory videos in Scary Breach. You got Snimic, or no, that's Spimic. This is Snimic. And then you got the Mimic, the current iteration prior to the events of Scary Breach. And then this is my favorite. This is one of my favorite ones. I'm actually shocked I was able to get the limbs to look right here. This is, I feel like, the most authentic to Scott's art style I've pulled off of the cards yet. But there we go. And then there's some ones where I'm like, I'm just kind of fucking around. What looks cool? What conveys the concept? I could have just drawn Monty's head for this one, honestly. This is the worst one. This is the worst art I've ever done for a FNaF card. Just to spite Monster. This is just a stupid goddamn card. I've tried harder with every other card art than this one. This is also this is the laziest I was ever though. The gas, the nightmare gas it doesn't look like anything. It's invisible. It's clear. So I'm just like, okay, I'll just draw the vent. Or not draw the vent. I'll just have the image of the vent. What am I supposed to draw for invisible clear gas? Some other ones I like that I did. Like I like how Dave the Diver Frank the Diver turned out. Like it conveyed, and I drew the outlines of the other characters from Submechnophobia in the background. This design is actually partially, like, it is referencing Frank's design from the actual art, but there's a character from a friend of mine, Carter, wanted to make a fighting game at one point, and one of the characters I designed for it was named Brine, who was supposed to be kind of a criminal, sort of a serial killer, but that wasn't like his main deal. He just he was a guy who happened to kill people as part of his crimes. But he tries to escape from his island, the prison island he's trapped on, and he has one of these old school diver setups, and then the cord snaps while he's trying to make his escape. And then he's like kind of this cursed zombie haunted diver suit, and I wanted to incorporate some of that feel for that. Like this pose is like 1-to-1 for that design. It's also supposed to be like floating underwater and all that. So, I wonder if Mr. Burroughs will get a design. I didn't really like the art I did for him. I could have just drawn the I could have drawn the gas tanks from such a location, I guess.
Input did you guys have with the story? Was Scott involved or at all, like helping with the story, building it together?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the best way to describe it is that we are creative collaborators, but Scott is always kind of the prime mover, right? He sits at the head of the pyramid. We've worked with him for many years now, so I think we've built enough trust that he allows us to make a lot of the on-the-ground decisions as long as we're following his overarching direction.
Yeah, that's awesome. I don't know if you can answer this, but how is Scott feeling about this game? Is he excited? Is he hyped up for it?
I think it's fair to say that, yes, everyone who sees this game is very excited.
Oh, that's so exciting. Oh,
that's one of those, I will say, this is the first question I'm like, that's kind of a nothing question. Of course Scott's going to say he's excited.
my God. Did you take any feedback from Help Wanted 2 as well, and development with that, and, with Secret of the Mimic?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that was one of the impetuses for making the shift to.
Yeah, I suppose a novel character could have been used for the, whatchamacallit, for the Dead by Daylight. That was a fair point. But yeah, it's interesting confirmation that Scott is writing the outline of this again. So once again, to go to my Dragon Ball comparison, this is kind of like how, Dragon Ball Super, there's not like a super specific script for any episode or plot. I mean, there is, but it's not written by Toriyama. It's what the anime studio, it's what Toei and Toyotaro wrote for their own versions, based on the general notes of what's going on. So once again, we know Scott approved this. That's good to go with. Assuming this is pretty accurate, does kind of corroborate Into the Pit's game counterpart being also accurate, because the big counter argument up against people saying it's not canon or whatever is that Scott just loosely followed along or whatever. And firstly, I'd argue that I don't think that really means it's not canon, but some people are treating it like that. But
to flat is just so that we can have everyone play the game on day one, right? But one of the things we heard from Help Wanted was like, hey, that's great, I really want to play it, but I don't have a VR headset or something like that. So, okay,
I don't think Scott wanted that vent to connect to the Nightmare Experiments right away. I don't think the Nightmare Experiments were intended when 4 came out. Just straight up. There's not much implying it. Yeah.
Well, that's a bummer, right? We want everyone to be able to experience it all together on day one. And then, absolutely we want to support the VR side as well. But if not everyone has the headset, that's kind of a bummer.
Yeah, I think that's the smartest thing to do as well. So everybody can play it at launch. Yeah, that's great. A lot of people have noticed new characters, new suits and stuff that I don't think were even in the books, the Tale of the Pizzaplex books. So what was it like just having that freedom to do your own things and creativity, probably mostly for the first time, like making your own designs of costumes and stuff?
Right. Yeah, it's funny, right? Because this game takes place in a costume workshop. So you would imagine there's more than a few interesting costumes going on here. Scott really early on sent us key art that he had worked on with his artists that sort of showcased these creepy hallways and stuff. And he said, this is kind of the tone that I want from this game. And in that key art were certain characters like the Mushroom and the Jester and stuff.
So there's art. So there is art of the Jester, is what I'm hearing. Because once again, I had to make up art for all this shit. There is no art of this bastard. I made this. I made this because it doesn't have art. So where the hell is the art of this guy? Where is he?
We were like, okay, first things first, we're building these characters. So we basically took almost all of those characters and put them into 3D, built them all out, and then we said, okay, well that's some. We need more. So how are we gonna? We gotta flesh out this roster here, and then we started pulling inspiration.
I mean, we might have seen the Jester in the trailer, but I'm just saying, like, where? Internal concept art. It doesn't matter, I guess. Scott keeping his Jester art from Scott's. Whatever.
Information from other FNaF games and where we wanted the story to go and what sorts of things we were trying to say with the characters. And this isn't a Fazbear like facility, right? So this is, some of it can be connected and some of it's not, right? So yeah, we started building these character roster out that in a way that was starting from Scott's concepts and trying to be in that same world. Gives us a great kickoff point from what kind of world he wants us to be building.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I've already seen online that some of the new characters are people's favorites, which is so cool to see.
I do like a lot of the designs they've done for this. Scott lost a map pad and he's to mess with someone else. It's all going to be art renders for me. The lore can torment me as much as it wants. I just want the renders. I want the art for my cards. But once again, this is interesting how they're talking about this. So it does sound like this is the most freedom they've had since maybe Security Breach. But it's also like the least in the dark they seem to be. Like when they're talking about this, it feels like they know what they're talking about a little bit more than in hindsight. That, once again, I mentioned that Security Breach interview, where there's this kind of subtext in that interview of like, yeah, we're making this thing. It's something, all right. God, hoarding his renders like a dragon.
Yeah, I can't wait to see that. Maybe some more characters and stuff. I don't know if we've seen them all, but yeah, it's exciting. This game is the prequel, the earliest game that we've got so far in the FNaF franchise. The early years of Fazbear Entertainment and stuff. So did any games that Scott's made or you guys have made in the past take any inspiration for the development of this?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we look at all of the FNaF games. I mean, at this point, we are FNaF experts, right? That's what we're paid to do. So yeah, we research very deeply into every FNaF game and look for any shreds of reference we can pull and connections we can make, because we really want this to be a contiguous part of the entire FNaF like continuum, right? We don't want it to live on its own as this weird side thing. But it's interesting too, as part of the entire we can pull and connections we can make, because we really want this to be a contiguous part of the entire FNaF like continuum, right? We don't want it to live on its own as this weird side thing.
Take that, all three people who thought Security Breach was in its own continuity. No one was arguing that. I just missed that line and replayed it. I wanted to make it seem like I had a point I was going there. I just was like, I kind of spaced out for a second, or I'm like, what was just said? So yeah, it is interesting that they're going to try and work in. No one fucking believed that Security Breach was on continuity. I'm just making fun of that idea. But yeah, it sounds like more or less this is going to fit into things. There's probably going to, like Darko was saying, there's probably going to be some references to like Fredbear's era and all that.
But it's interesting too, as we're developing the game, there's these certain themes that start reemerging. right, I call it thematic repetition. They say like, what's the saying? History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. It's sort of like that, right? These ideas that aren't necessarily direct one-to-ones, but there are these like churning, narrative motifs that come around again. And I think we see a lot of that, and having that emerge as a prequel is a really interesting dynamic, right? Because what does it say about, right, this like the sequel influences the prequel, right?
Yes, yeah, that's awesome.
Motifs that come around again.
That was interesting. I want to go through
like
that
certain
again.
themes that start reemerging, a contiguous part of the entire FNaF like continuum, right? We don't want it to live on its own as this weird side thing. But it's interesting too, as we're developing the game, there's these certain themes that start reemerging. Right, I call it thematic repetition. They say like, what's the saying? History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. It's sort of like that, right? These ideas that aren't necessarily direct one-to-ones, but there are these like churning, narrative motifs that come around again. And I think we see a lot of that, and having that emerge as a prequel is a really interesting dynamic, right?
So it's interesting. So, so that sounds like we're going to do a whole like we're going to see. I'm thinking here we're going to see how a lot of the mimics patterns are born. It's kind of what this is stealth saying. Like a lot of glitch trap and mimics behavior is probably going to be interpreted in this game for like the historical precedent of where it came from. And or he's talking about how this connects to the original games, which would be interesting itself. Prequel, yeah. That's a really interesting one because I want to see what they're talking about with this line, because that's one of those things you don't say. Sometimes I feel like developers will just say kind of nonsense to like fill out time or answer questions that they don't want to answer too deeply. That's such a weird answer that has to like represent something, there's something they have in mind that that they're talking about here. There's something we're going to see in this game that's going to like connect to a later event historically. Because they would just be like, it's a good story and there's themes and there's whatever. They would say more generic statements, but saying it specifically will see history repeat itself and history rhymes is interesting, like as a claim to make for a prequel. My guess is it's kind of referring to whatever's going to be after Ruin is going to represent how the mimic, or maybe it's referencing Ruin and what's going to follow, where the mimic's going to pull like the whole classic luring technique of like, help me, Fran, help me. Yeah, no, I don't think this is about Tales games, that segment at all. I think a lot of people will reach for whatever they want to hear. I think in this case, it's talking about like I said, the idea of the mimic is a cyclical being that's kind of doomed to this history by the nature of its creation. This is something I want to talk about. I mentioned in that video talking about how like the new FNaF games are cooler than people give credit. What's cool about the mimic is it's an interesting commentary on technology designed around copying human behaviors, because the mimic itself shows how that technology can go so wrong so easily without being like, it's not like the mimic was designed to be Skynet. It wasn't like the mimic was designed to hurt people like something like Circus Baby is. The mimic feels like the example of like, if you designed a machine to literally copy every behavior it sees, just by human nature, it will see something you don't want it to repeat again. And that will keep happening. It will keep adding up and it will get worse and worse over time. And I think that's such a, it's kind of what I like about Ultron from Marvel, is like the idea of you know, in the comics and also Earth's Mightiest Heroes, taking Hank Pym's pacifistic, kind heart and then twisting it and perverting it with the idea of humans are so violent and I wish they weren't, to I should get rid of humans. That's the ultimate goal for peace. It's kind of like that, where it's like how something can literally interpret a challenge given to it, or a set of instructions given to it, and it doesn't have the human filter to understand what's wrong with how it's handling it. It doesn't have that mortal lens to it, so it just does it over and over again, and it gets worse and worse. And I mean, the Mimic, saying the Mimic has no motivation is like saying the Terminator is a bad villain or Skynet is a bad villain. It's like it's not a complicated villain. Maybe you could argue, but it's a horror series. It needs to just be a scary concept. It doesn't need to be that there's something inherently scary about it not having a motivation, I'd argue. I think that's what a lot of people are missing when they say the Mimic has no character, which I don't even agree with. I think the Mimic does have enough of a personality to argue with. But the idea of something that just exists and it's instinct. I mean, Skynet had an objective, but like what makes the Terminator scary is, like I said, that there is no filter to how it gets there. It's not like the Terminator believes Skynet's going to save the world. It's a robot designed to kill John Connor and Sarah Connor. And it will fucking do anything to get to that point. T-1000 and T-800 respectively, for Terminator 1 and 2 respectively. The idea, because what's scary about the Mimic is William is human enough that it feels like you can kill him and you can get revenge on him. You know, there's this mortal folly of his own arrogance that will downplay against him. There's something terrifying about the Mimic of, like I said, it's the Ultron fear of it will find a way to keep existing, and as long as it exists, it will keep just hurting and destroying because it cannot be stopped in that regard. T-1000 is a great threat, but it's like what I'm talking about. It's not like T-1000, you know, it's not like it's like, for the good of Earth, we will destroy humanity. It doesn't talk about that shit. It's just the inevitability of it. Like, you know, it's called Skeller Unrested. It's like it's just, this is my purpose. I will do everything to get there. And that is scary in its own way. And I think that's underrated.
What does it say about, right, this, like, the sequel influences the prequel,
yes, right? Yes, yeah, that's awesome. How long has this been in development then? Like, you said that you were working on the game early on when the books were being made and stuff, so how long has it been?
I think it was, we first started talking about it kind of early 2022. Yeah, long time ago.
So a little bit after the initial book launch.
But it was always on the back, right? It was always like, we'd kick around ideas and like, oh, maybe this, maybe that, maybe here are these story beats, you know, does this make sense? We're talking about it while Ruin is...
The Mimic is more than just animatronic parts. It's the software. Because that's part of what's going on with, like, the storyteller and all that is, I'd argue that glitch trap and the storyteller respectively don't really count as the core Mimic, but it is a representation of why that AI is so dangerous. Just having that thing exist, even if you restart it from scratch, even if you removed all the evil parts of it, like that's why I'm talking about the scary inevitability of it. The Mimic just needs to exist long enough to learn the bad behaviors to be a threat. Is the Mimic more of a GLaDOS or an AM? It's not a GLaDOS. GLaDOS has humanity, weirdly enough. She's scary in her own ways, but she's based on Carolyn's intellectual archetype. And or she is Carolyn recreated. I actually don't know how clear GLaDOS's existence is. I guess she deletes Carolyn afterwards, but you can see how it still affected her. Steal multitasking 3 games at once. Kind of what was going on. Yeah, and the threat of the mimic is not just the one endoskeleton that's scary that copies behaviors. That obviously is scary in its own way. It's the idea of, cool, we killed it, but the software still exists, and only one stupid asshole needs to get that software to start the problem again. Yeah, she kills. I remember that. I forgot she killed Carolyn at the end of the Carolyn personality at the end of Portal 2, but it's clear. Yeah, she's creepy in her own way, but she's not quite what I'm talking about. Even Ultron has humanity now that I'm thinking about it. What's scary about the Mimic is it has a personality, but it's hollow. It's whatever. It's there was a actually let me pull this up because I've never shared this. This was I had to do this for a school project. If I still have this somewhere, I think I do. So this was a audio drama I created. It's not. I don't have the actual MP4 anymore. Damn it. But it was an audio drama I made. Wait, is this it? But the threat in this was kind of, I mean, the Mimic didn't exist when I made this. It was ages ago.
Louis.
That's my cringy old audio for it. Ignore that. Nope, I don't have the audio. Nope, that's cringy old teenage me. I don't have the original audio. But anyway, the premise of the threat in that was it was a broken kind of survey protection robot that unintentionally constantly killed people but was stuck on its like comfort settings personality wise, so it's acting like this thing trying to protect you and save you despite the fact that it's unintentionally mutilating you constantly. Yeah, sorry, Squawk's computer to get the original audio. But that was the premise of the audio drama, loosely inspired by FNaF. But I thought that was like the idea of a thing that doesn't. You can't convince it to stop. You can't bribe it to stop. You can't like strategize around its personality. Really, you can only strategize around its programming, which is similar but not quite the same thing.
It's being worked on. Eventually, Help Wanted 2 is being worked on.
And we
didn't get
I guess
full active development until after Help Wanted 2. So it's been about a year and a half of like, you know, all hands on deck, full studio active development.
Yeah, I feel like you guys have been teasing about like this like for a while with like the Fall Fest posters and stuff. It always feels like you've had it like in your heads for a while. Like I remember in Help Wanted 1 when you guys had the Fall Fest. I think it was Fall Fest 1983 or something like that, and everybody was saying, "What does a Fall Fest? Are we doing Fall Fest?" And yeah, it's crazy to think that was 6 years ago, and now we're finally getting something of, you know, involving like that kind of thing. So yeah,
it's one of the fun things of working on a franchise like this is that we can look like really far in the future, and maybe we don't know exactly what forms things are going to take, but we can kind of see where we want to go and start laying some groundwork in the games that we make.
Like you said, the game's been in development for about a year and a half, right? How big is the game?
Anyone hear a chainsaw who's splattering paint? Is that a reference to something? Or no, I don't have any audio playing. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so it's funny. It's so hilarious. We wanted to make a claustrophobic game. We were like, okay, let's make narrow hallways, small spaces, and it's and originally being concepted, you know, as a VR experience. Things in VR feel.
I don't think the Mimic is haunted by Remnant or David because it's not how that works. Because I don't. Okay, I'm trying. Sorry, my brain's blanking. Possession typically involves being near something and having like a kind of physical connection to that. The idea of the metal, like of remnant, right? You know, this was kind of stayed back in FNaF 1 of like memory. Metal has a memory it refuses to forget. And the mimic doesn't though. It like part of the whole reason Edwin beats the ever loving shit out of it is because it doesn't know what happened and just keeps copying the old behaviors over and over again. Like the whole point is it doesn't understand what happened. So yeah.
A lot like bigger than they are in flat, right? In VR, you can reach your hands out and touch the walls, but if you were to make a 6-foot wide hallway in flat, it would feel very narrow, whereas in VR it feels very wide, right? So we're trying to find like the right size of this building, and we know it's going to be a character workshop. We know it's a warehouse, so there's larger spaces.
What would it take for you? What would it take for you to show on it someone else's video, like an email or a message? Kind of it. If the mimic thinks he's David and acts like David, is he not really David? I mean, that's kind of a philosophical thing, but I would say still no, because it can only copy what it's seen up to that point. One of the whole things the mimic seems to struggle with is making something new, and that's kind of what you know, a lot of like the chat GPT discussions have really been, is that they can't. A lot of the AI technology struggles with something truly new, because even when it makes something like an image, it is on a human prompt. It is trying to make what we made. It's not like it came to that conclusion itself. That's not how this works. Now, granted, you know, it's a sci-fi world. There's a magical element to it, so maybe that could be worked around. But it's not always quite the same, you know. And that's not to say the mimic isn't capable of like critical thinking. It just is like, because it does seem to be able to like put basic ideas together, but even that's like computer logic of like, there's a door in the way. I know that you can open a door by moving the handle, so I open the handle. I showed up in a 14 theory video, so I you know, it's just kind of contact. I want to like the script enough to follow with it. This is something I want to discuss in Neon Dynamo. So in Neon Dynamo, the main, I'm going to call her an AI, but this is part of what I'm getting into. When we first meet Anais in Neon Dynamo, it's Anais Lite. It is this program that is sort of somewhere between a Siri ChatGPT style AI bot that is basically just an elaborate keyboard for the Neon Dynamo's functionality, with some of a built-in manual function and a built-in explanation for how it works. So it's like whoever's in the Neon Dynamo, we can explain how the ship works, why they're there, etc. But there's this kind of flat repeating quality to it, and I intentionally wrote in contradictions to what it says, because it's just repeating early information put into it, and cannot explain updated information unless that was specifically changed retroactively. So it gets stuff like, you know, the Neon Dynamo has a kind of a TARDIS functionality where it can become bigger depending on where you are in it. Like it seems to have more rooms than the ship can fit. When I first wrote the idea of it, I called it zero space, then I called it pocket space, and I had Anais flip between that with the idea of the prompt it's written with has both in it, so it just says both. But then, around chapter 5 and 6, we meet Anais Prime, who is also technically an artificial consciousness, but she is more of an artificial ghost that haunts a machine than she is an AI. She is not like ChatGPT. She's not predicting text responses and filling that out. She has a human's equivalent of a soul. that functions, and that was kind of like my way of like defining a difference. It's how I want to do it.
Smaller spaces. And so like early on we said, okay, well, how big is this map compared to Security Breach? And we overlaid them, and the entire footprint of the facility could fit into Roxy Raceway.
Oh,
which I thought was hilarious. It's like, wow, I thought we made a big game. But I think for us it was all about density of design, right?
Yeah.
And there's multiple stories and secret passageways and, you know, hidden false walls and stuff like that. So, you know, you might find a smaller room, but it might have, you know, a lot more going on than it would if it was the same content but stretched in a much larger space.
Yeah,
this is kind of exactly what I was talking about, where Security Breach has a lot of scale, but there's not a lot in that scale. So it's cool that they're just like, it's a smaller map, but they're doing more with every room of it. This is a weird kind of a comparison, but this is something I realized when I was playing something like Sims 4 when it initially came out. Was I wanted to build these big, huge mansions with all these features and stuff in it, and then I would always run out of money and be like, well, it's a giant empty box. Because I'm like, oh, bigger is better. Then I realized, like, you can fit so much in so many rooms so compactly if you shorten and tighten it down. But okay, going to a robot is sentient. What I mean when I don't call a robot sentient, I mean the how something like ChatGPT works is it just really quickly calculates what is the most likely next word in a sentence over and over again. And it has a database of all the stuff to draw from for what is most likely to fill that sentence. It is in reality a very elaborate formula. And now you could argue, is a person a really elaborate formula? Maybe, but at the degree a person is elaborate is so much more than ChatGPT that even if you want to argue it, we're just a formula. It is such an nth degree further, and there's so many other things that are just baked in that DNA that is not in ChatGPT yet. So, like, what counts as sentience? Is there a degree of intelligence that just automatically classifies that? Or does it have to be capable of true emotion? It's a whole fucking topic. Whatever.
I think a criticism on Security Breach was that maybe it was too big, right? So it's really cool that you guys are doing something like that, like very claustrophobic and in its own like factory and stuff. So yeah, that is very exciting. I can't wait to find all the secrets and the hidden vents and stuff to go through. The Mimic. Okay, so the Mimic is from the books. Just how accurate or true are you guys going to be sticking to the Mimic, or have you like? Again, this might be no. I feel like they might be spoilery, but like, have you got? Yeah, like, have you changed? Yeah.
I will say, if you've read the books, you
There's the big
don't
one.
know the full story.
Okay, that's perfect. It seems like you guys. I know you guys are doing something like Edwin's Factory.
Okay, this is one of those. Once again, you can have the statement go either way. If you say. Because even in the books, we do not know the Mimic's whole story. There's this whole subplot that something happened between the events of the Mimic and Storyteller that caused Edwin to be utterly terrified of the Mimic. Because if you go off the Mimic alone and just skip straight to Storyteller without thinking about that concept, the way Edwin talks about the Mimic in Storyteller doesn't make sense. And because in the Mimic, he just beats the shit out of the robot and then leaves. It's how it's presented in the short story, and then it starts killing and attacking people based on that information. And then whatchamacallit, then in Storyteller, he's like, I can't let it happening again. And then he has this whole monologue about like how he keeps the posters up of Freddy Fazbear's to remind himself of the horrors he did, or he was like a part of or whatever. So it implies the Mimic did crazy shit off screen. That we never really got to see. And also, remember, in the short story The Mimic, they don't collect the Mimic. They just find it again after all this time. And then he kills them. So there's plenty of shit the Mimic could have done off screen, so that could go into that quote, but it could just be Steelwell's way of saying, yeah, listen, the books give you the more or less gist, but we're going to be doing our own thing. Oh yeah, the blood, there's so much blood. Narration right Edwin screams. Oh, the other thing Edwin remembers is the screams. He says there were so many screams. Or something like that. I'm loosely quoting there. Which is like how that doesn't happen from his point of view if you go off the Mimic short story. He wasn't there. It seems like Secret of the Mimic, I'm guessing, is that event that goes between those two things. I wouldn't be surprised if Secret of the Mimic reveals Edwin came back to his factory to try and finally stop the Mimic after hearing what it did. And maybe he had a team with him. And then maybe he works on the factory after maybe implementing the kill switch we saw in the Tales from the Pizzaplex Stingers. And then it goes rogue and crazy again. And then that's kind of what we're talking about, where like history repeats itself, where, like I said, this software is so fucking dangerous that just letting it run is the problem. You cannot let it grow or change and become dangerous. The implication is the Mimic killed a lot of people, like, openly. Like, not even like, oh, just like some random schmucks in the factory. Sorry, I'm chewing a medical tablet for my stomach, but you know, like, for him to remember the screams, I remember the screams and all that, implies something real bad happened. And they also talk about the mass-produced mimics. That was the thing that was mentioned, so who knows what happened there. I think that might be one of the reveals of the Mimic in this game, is that there might be multiple. That would be an interesting kind of reveal, that we're dealing with the mass-produced Mimics, not the Mimic, and maybe the final boss will be the Mimic, the singular one we saw in Ruin.
Just separate, right? But it feels like you also still trying to connect it with the FNaF universe at the same time.
I think that's fair to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, can't go into too much detail. Of
It's
course.
so hard.
But I will say this game was made for FNaF fans.
Yeah.
And there is a lot of connection if you want to look for it.
Do you know, like, an average projected length on how long the game's going to be?
Yeah, you know, we've been doing the regular Sauce's playthrough, and he's 6 hours in. I'd say he's about halfway through just the main line of the game, which I would say he won't even discover half the game at that point. So,
Jesus, that's big. To be halfway through the main story and only at 6 hours, that must be the longest FNaF game. Because, he was implying it'll be like a 12, 14-hour game completionist style, is what I'm hearing. Maybe longer. What I've heard people describe it as, and I wonder if it's going to be specifically described as that in this interview, is a Metroidvania, which I think is the coolest premise for a free roam FNaF game. Because, you know, that gets you to experience the threats again, and it gets you to look at room. I think what's genius about a horror Metroidvania is, you know, you go through. Let me get like a visual of this. Let me pull up like a maze, right? So let's have a maze, right? You go through this room this way, and then, oh, a jump scare around the corner. And then, oh, okay, you get on your way. You dodge a jump scare. But then the game's going back, and you have to go all the way back. You go around the maze. But I've got to get this thing that's in this corner. But the threat's here again. I know the threat's here. So now I've got to go look at it from another direction. I think that's a cool premise to get more interest out of a game and all that.
Yeah, we're looking at maybe like 8 to 10 hours for a single playthrough, and that's just like I said, like baseline. You could probably go 15 to 20 hours, and if you want to be a completionist about it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Difficulty-wise, is this game challenging at all? Is there some hard moments that's probably going to make me cry? on camera.
So yeah, like so we already talked about layers.
Yes.
So there's like the top layer. You can stay at the top if you want, and the game is moderately challenging. It's what we would expect, like someone who's maybe never played a FNAF game before.
Yeah.
They come in, they play the game, and they have a good time, and they beat the game. They get the credits, and good job. But again, that's only the top layer. And as you go deeper, we're gonna start, maybe asking for a little bit more effort.
So that sounds like the security breach 6 a.m. mechanic. This is what I'm hearing that. Where it sounds like to get the further secrets and all that, stuff like the ruined secret pathways, you're going to have to do a lot more work, is what I'm getting from that.
I don't think it'll be like, UCN or anything.
Oh,
but,
50-20 mode. Okay.
No. But definitely there's some more challenge the deeper you go.
So yeah, like you said, like there's like a top layer. So do you think this is easily accessible for new FNAF fans who haven't played a FNAF game before, can just dive in? Yeah.
Yeah, that's the goal, right? And from a narrative way as well, right? We want to, we tell a story that everyone can understand, even if they've never played a FNAF game before. It's a game that everyone can enjoy right at the top, but that's just this thin veneer at the top. And then very quickly, you start moving into deeper secrets and deeper connections.
I will say, this is one of my things I like about FNAF, that it's not given enough credit. If you just play basic FNAF each game, I think you actually can get a decent sense, minus a few entries, of where each thing is and what each thing is. FNAF 1, you're like, okay, it's a haunted pizzeria. FNAF 2, you really solidify it's like these are kids killed and haunted the robots. That's in FNAF 1, but it's a little less clear exactly how. But between the death mini games, which you're kind of guaranteed to get at least one of, I would say, in a playthrough, you can kind of put that together. Because if you get even one of those death mini games, you can put together the dead kids. Fox Go Go, dead kid. Save them, dead kids. Give Gifts Alive, dead kids. Give Cake, dead kids. And like if you're going through that, it's like, okay, so they're haunted by dead kids. There's this killer. He's represented as this purple character. There's this puppet thing that seems to be in charge, like large and in charge, but it's kind of contained. FNAF 3, it's like, okay, there's a weird moldy rabbit. Then it's revealed to be the thing haunted by the kids. That's the killer and all that. And then FNAF 4 is the first one that says, fuck you, you don't understand what's going on. It's the first one where I'm like, that's outright confusing and is not very clear. Sister Location, you can once again kind of get the gist of its own self-contained story of like, okay, so this is haunted by some ominous person working on the robots named Mr. Afton. Or not haunted by it. There's something off about these robots made by Mr. Afton, and his daughter haunts the main one. And wants out. You can kind of put that together even if you don't know who she is, who Afton is, and all that. And then throughout, the next game, you can figure out, oh, Afton's the killer. He's Springtrap. Okay, we got it. And Michael Afton's whole monologue, if you played the Sister Location custom map, you can figure out, okay, so we're his son. The killer is the bad guy, and his dad, and all that. And he's Springtrap, yada yada. It was a little confusing, that one, but you can kind of put it together there. Ultimate Custom Night, if you get enough death scenes, you can figure out you're the killer being tormented. It's not that subtle, even if fans try to make it more complicated than it is. Even Help Wanted, you can tell it's like, oh, it's an evil kind of virus monster that resembles Afton trying to kill all that, and so on and so on. Security Breach is one of those where it's kind of hard to tell what the hell's going on. Hand Unit also has the player's name on it. That's one of the best examples of Scott like clearly having a plan and then just telling us something because we didn't get it. So whatever.
Connections and harder gameplay and that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's exciting. From the trailer, we see, like I've mentioned before, new characters and stuff. Are there any that haven't been shown yet?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay, thanks.
There's a lot,
I hope there's at least one section with each classic animatronic. Like a mimic in a Freddy costume and all that. That would make sense in universe. It would just work flavor wise. it's a kind of an obvious idea, but I think that would just be a cool way to have like the classic cast in there. Like a Mimic Fredbear, and that would also allow me to do a lot mechanically in the game, in the TCG, where I could have Mimic, I don't know what the Greek letter for F is, but Fazbear mode, Mimic Chica mode, Mimic Foxy mode, Mimic like Bonnie mode, or like Mimic Fredbear mode, etc. And that would be allow me to do like a hybrid of like, once per turn you can use an effect that mentions gain or lose 10% power or whatever for like Freddy or whatever.
Huge
Tie it in.
shout out, by the way, to our characters team. When I pitched them what this game was going to be, their eyes like, oh, are you kidding me? Like, oh no, there's too many characters. It's like, no, we can do this. I believe in them, and they pulled it off. It's amazing.
Oh, that's
Yeah, the Glitch Trap costume should appear in Secret of the Mimic. That would be a cool basic way to do it.
so cool. Awesome. Did you guys have, because this game's set in the 70s, right? Did you guys have any other influences that inspired this game at all, like movies or other games?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously FNaF games are like the biggest influence, but outside of the FNaF games, I really was pulling a lot from Alien Isolation early on. I think that was a really great point of reference.
Always a good reference. Hey, anything that references Alien Isolation horror-wise, they at least had a good influence, I'll say. Doesn't mean it'll be good automatically, but it means it has a good, like, they're referencing something worthwhile. You know, they're not... It's not like, oh, I wanted to make a platformer, so I played Bubsy 3D.
For us,
You know, it's
especially
not
because
that.
I mean, Alien being kind of like a retro futurism of the 70s anyway. It has some interesting aesthetic tie-ins as well as the gameplay stuff, right? And then outside of games, I would look at like environments and tones of like 70s and 80s horror movies, you know, like The Shining or like Texas Chainsaw Massacre and that kind of thing. Not so much for the content, but for like, you know, the aesthetics and the right. And then also I think the biggest one though, outside of all of that, are these like practical VFX workshops, like Jim Henson, or like Tippett Studios, right? These practical effects shops. And if you've ever been in one of those, it's wild. You walk down these hallways and it's like there's like stories just in piles. You know, it's just like, oh, that's that thing from that movie and that thing from that commercial, and it's just spilling into their work. And they're like a hoarder. These guys, they make paths around their like movie props, and they're constantly, it's just so much creativity spilling out of every, you know, corner. And then a lot of the digital VFX guys in those shops work next to the practical VFX guys. So they're on their computers, but they're getting like, you know, splatters from the paint and stuff. And it's just such a really cool, you know, gritty environment. And we really...
I will say, I've really liked the environment design we've seen of Secret of the Mimic so far. It just feels like this weird, kind of like logistically not nonsensical, but like in a way that, you know, what he's describing, it makes sense that it's nonsensical because that's how the real versions of these things are. It's not a clean environment. A lot of creatives' environments are not clean, or they are super clean. It's kind of all or nothing.
Really wanted to pull from that. So
what could possibly go wrong?
Work with Tippett, and we went there. It was many years ago, and there's the guys that did the Jurassic Park, you know, practical VFX and stuff. So you know, it was really great seeing that. Those were, I'd say, our biggest real world inspirations.
That is so cool. So yeah, like in the factory, like from some of the screenshots that we got of some of the rooms in the trailer, like shelving units with just a bunch of random different props and stuff everywhere.
Right.
Yeah, that's exciting. I can't wait for that, because like I'm assuming you guys have put like props and stuff in that FNaF fans are probably gonna pick up on. So
there's gotta be an Ella thing somewhere in here. Ella just loves appearing in random FNaF garbage. So, I just want her to randomly show up. You know she will. I need another Ella Secret of the Mimic card. Because that's just how I work with her, you know? She's such a dumb, random character who just forces her way into existence randomly in FNaF.
Oh, yeah.
That's
when
awesome.
the regular sauce was playing, he'd be like going through some of these and be like, "Oh my god, that looks just like my workshop." And I'm like, "That's
awesome.
successful.
That's awesome. Developing this game, has it been a challenge? Have you had some like challenges that you've had to face, or has it been just a breeze basically? I don't feel like anything is a breeze. There's some ups and downs with every project and stuff.
Sure, yeah. Collaboratively making art has a lot of challenges.
Yeah.
And I would say this game has gone a lot more smoothly than maybe you would expect. I think this was one of our better productions as far as that goes. I think the team is absolutely amazing. They are really pushing the boundaries of what we as a studio are capable of. I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm biased, but I think this game is some of the best work this studio's ever made.
Oh, I'm so excited.
I think what fucked up Eleanor, in terms of her application is there's a reveal for what she did, but not a reveal for what she is. You know, I feel like Ella's one of those, Eleanor is one of those, she could have had this great almost, what am I thinking of? Like this Lovecraftian kind of origin of this creature that just feeds on pain and suffering. We could have really learned and seen that origin and how it escalates and builds. I think it would have been cool if we just got one stinger dedicated to her, what she is and why, to make her really feel like, because yeah, there's horror in the unknown, but there's also this horror in knowing how awful something is and what it represents, and there's not that, really. And she is kind of just like a demon or agony or whatever, but like there's not like a specific, I guess there's the kind of her rising out of Afton's corpse visual, but it doesn't feel like there's a conclusion with her where we understand what she really is as a monster. I wish her design wasn't so goofy. I mean, you can just criticize the graphic novels for that, though. She's not goofy in her description in the stingers. Like, yeah, if she is the nature of sadism, I want that to be emphasized more, because it doesn't feel like that. I stand by the Stitch Ray Stingers should have been like a monthly comic series going up to about a year's worth of content. It's about a total of like 12 comic issues done by like Dark Horse or something like that. Some studio that's really experienced with comic art, given like a real time to work on it and really set it out. Exactly. There's horror in the unknown, but if we don't know enough, it's just confusing, and that's kind of, I think, Eleanor's problem. But I think it is one of those, like, because she's a sort of twist reveal, we don't really get time to dwell on how haunting she really is or her behavior. We just kind of have to retroactively be like, oh, so she was behind that? What? Why? What is that? I mean, yeah, she feeds on suffering, but okay. I think she should have been represented as a more constant, ever-prevalent figure in Fazbear Fright. Like, I feel like every Fright story should have, like, built her up in some way. For example, let's say Pit Trap takes off its mask. Pit Trap has like red pigtails like seeping through the back of its mask or something like that, or like red hair coming out of its mouth or something like that, and like green eyes or something that represents Eleanor. And then that keeps happening where it's like, imagine if just randomly in Step Closer, Foxy just stopped like his chant in Pete's dreams of like, first you need to lose an eye and arm, but instead just out of nowhere, right before the dream ends, just said, she's here, or something like that. Like something weird that just is like breaks the pattern and is scary in its own right. Like even the monster we're following is afraid of her. You know. It's just 33 minutes, stop being longer. Nothing happens in the video. I'm getting something out of this. Be quiet.
And you can't even answer this, but after Secret of the Mimic, are you guys
I mean, she is kind of implied to be a shapeshifter.
still in your FNaF brains after Secret of the Mimic? Future plans?
Yeah, I wouldn't know. I
mean, I think it's obvious.
Yeah,
but...
no comment on that one.
Right, I'm gonna get the next poster up because when I saw this one, it made my brain start functioning a bit better than it is at the moment. Next poster that Steel will send
See, this is probably going to be our security breach badge system equivalent.
me. Again, thank you so much. Yeah. This one made me theorize a bit more. So the poster says, where do you belong? Basic, security, repair, creator, admin, executive. Your data diver knows, and at the top right, it's MCM. I'm guessing is that Murray's costume manner?
I think, yeah, that is
Okay, awesome. Is this a mechanic in the game? Is this teasing a mechanic in the game, or is it just a poster?
Well, it's not random.
yeah.
Yeah. There's definitely tie-ins to the game and the progression loop of the game.
The symbol that made me think the.
I will say it's interesting that that there is designation for where you work, because that is a straight up difference from Tales from the Pizzaplex, where he was working on his own, alone in the factory. I'm guessing this means either, once again, we're changing details from Tales for the sake of the story, once again, soft canon. The idea is loosely there, but like details are going to be changed. But it also could be that just time has passed since the Mimic short story, and now Edwin has a factory with people in it. Like, it's become bigger since then. Which is an interesting difference.
The most is the executive symbol. If this is the date, like if the data diver has these different things, it's hard. Do these different symbols give us access to different areas?
That'd be one thought. Yeah.
I just want to theorize with you, even though this is the problem.
let's think about this together.
Yeah, because the problem is, right, I can theorize loads, right, but you know the answers. That's the problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
I will say, people ask, like, why does Doc ask the questions he does, but, like, remember, he can't ask for answers. That would spoil new games if it's stealable. And also, like, one of the stipulations of his interviews with Scott was that he can't just ask for answers, because then what real questions would he get? It would be stuff like, who is the crying child? Well, it's like, it takes away from the fun of discussion and all that if we're just told, yeah, he was a kid of William, and then he died, and that caused William to kill Charlie, or whatever the fuck. Like, it would be boring. I mean, it would be hype at the moment. The moment of that interview, that would be hype. But, the flavor of FNaF is it's a mysterious, haunted pizzeria, right? That's the experience of the series. As the security guard, we are not just defending ourselves, but we are trying to uncover the mystery. That is the experience that we, the player, are meant to have. FNaF does that through how it has its lore. Whereas in these kind of conversations, it's like, and it gets even worse if it's a game that's not out yet, or it's like, we can't ask for the answer to the mystery, because then there is no goddamn mystery.
Yeah.
Because I think from the trailer, I think we did see like
And also, I assume some of Scott's answers are really messy or like complicated for some characters. Like, people asking who is William Afton really? It's like, there's probably an hour-long answer to that. Like, that's probably not a simple answer.
the helper on the computer, right? I feel like that might have tie-ins to this and stuff, and maybe logs on the computer. But yeah, it's very exciting. It really is. Do you guys have anything cool planned before the release of the game?
Yeah, so after the interview launches, be sure to stay tuned to our socials, and maybe we'll tease something out.
Yeah, that's awesome. Can't wait for that. Get everybody hyped up for the release. It's coming up it's came around so quickly. It literally feels like last week I was at PAX playing the game in VR. It's crazy how quickly development with games go. Like, Security Breach was like, what, 4 years ago when it released? It's weird. Any final thoughts that you want to give out to the fans watching?
Yeah, I just want to quickly, Daco, say thank you. Thank you to you. Thank you to everyone who ends up watching this. We love making FNaF games. and we couldn't do it without the incredible support of the community. You know, like I said before, we make games for the fans, and that's like a responsibility. I know everyone loves this franchise so much, and that's a responsibility that
It's one of those, like, I don't have much to say. Like, this is just kind of explained.
we take really seriously. So to see the community like reaction to the demo and the trailers and like all the fan art that's been being made, you know, it just means a lot. So yeah, thank you.
It's going to be so exciting. I'm sure everybody's going to love it. The reaction to the game, you know, was so positive when the trailer came out and stuff. And you guys seem to be experimenting with gameplay mechanics and stuff like that, like taking FNaF in a fresh direction, right? And I feel like it needed that. I really do. I'm so grateful for you guys and thankful for Scott for finding you guys in the first place.
Before we get to that teaser that's been released since the interview, can someone like link it in the Discord server? Just real quick so I can pull that up.
Back when Help Wanted came out, and you know, you guys have been doing amazing things.
Oh, there's going to be bugs. This is Steel Wool. As much as I respect like Steel Wool's like creative integrity and all that, I think they do a lot of cool stuff. There's going to be bugs. I'm just curious what they are.
Since then, so it's very exciting.
Why do you think Glitchtrap was the main villain of the first game?
I have a question for you.
Okay.
What are you most excited about from what you've seen? What's the thing you most want to see in the game?
Okay. Well, I don't know if you watch my videos, but I want... Everything I've seen so far is great, by the way. But I want... The thing what I love about FNaF is juicy lore. I love lore so much, and I just want to know, like, what's going on, like Fazbear Entertainment's involvement, and I'd really love to see some involvement with Fredbear's Family Diner, and seeing those Fredbear Family Diner posters on the walls everywhere, and I don't know, I feel like something's gonna happen, and I'd love to just the story about Edwin as well. Edwin's involvement, like what's Edwin been up to, and obviously lore about the Mimic, and yeah, Fazbear Entertainment's involvement, like them wanting the Mimic so badly, and
that is a good question of, like, beyond it just being experimental, like innuendo, skeleton, and AI. I am curious what Fazbear wants out of the Mimic that they don't already have, you know. Like, does William specifically want the Mimic? Is this just over-ambition, as he tends to be, of wanting something he can't really control? Is this, like, Henry being just like, you know, wow, what an incredible thing. I want that in the pizzerias. This would be an amazing tool for the entertainment. Like, what do they think they're getting out of it? I think is a really interesting, good question to ask about the plot of this game. Because they clearly really want the Mimic. Like, they are fascinated with this thing to keep sending people in and to keep spending money to try and collect it.
The ending of this game too, I'm very interested in. Like,
it would be interesting, you know, if Midnight Motors connects to the Mimic or not. My guess, I don't know if we're going to be playing as Afton in the Mimic or not, but it would be cool if at the final shot, the Midnight Motor pulls up with a Spring Bonnie bobblehead or something like that. And that's our confirmation of Afton Midnight Motor, something like that.
In the future games, like, Edwin is kind of forgotten about, right? And I just want to see just what happens with the factory, and just again the involvement with Fazbear Entertainment. I'd love to see. This is very high, you know, but I'd love to see, like, Henry or William being involved somehow. That would be really cool too. So yeah,
it could be just cut corners on performers. Yeah, I guess, where they want a robot that can do all the performance as like a lifelike person without being a person that you need to pay and keep in tow and all that. So there is like an application there, I guess. But it's just interesting that they're so obsessed with this thing despite how clearly dangerous it is. That goes to what I was talking about, where, like, the danger of the Mimic, beyond being a robot that kills people, is that it's so good at convincing you by premise that it's not that you can be the one to do it right. It's the kind of Jurassic Park philosophy and the One Ring from Lord of the Rings philosophy of, You are the one who is different. That is the main thing that the InGen is great at convincing people when it comes to working on the dinosaurs in Jurassic Park, and also in the One Ring itself is so good at convincing that you are the one who can control it. You are the one who can have the ring, and you will be the one able to rule all of Middle Earth and all that. You are the one who can stop. Like you, it's such a concept that's so good at convincing you that you are the one who can handle it. That if you just wipe the bad data, you can make the good version of it. And Edwin could be a playable character for the game. That is an interesting idea to consider. It's possible. I don't know about it, but it's possible. Because it would make sense that he's the one who can actually stop the mimic at its core. All right, so we're about the parent child, but both the runaway and the man in the woods, coming home style, we're alone together. That I have thought of that idea, and I've thought about that on multiple degrees. I thought about one angle where the idea is it's Mike being the runaway, and what he's being lured by is Fredbear, and he's obsessed with Fredbear, and that's his motivation for becoming a security guard. He wants to see what happened to Fredbear. That's one idea I toyed with. Then, of course, the idea of like, what if the crying child running away from home? That kind of raises the question of why does he have footprints? Because one of the core concepts of Coming Home was that Susie wasn't actually there, even though her ghost form or like her mind is there. Like she has some influence, but it's not like footsteps. But the footsteps could just be a clarity thing. But then there's the question of why does Afton know about that? Like how does he know? Because once again, like, well, it's an interesting idea, but I would need more solid proof to convey that's the idea. I would need Orange Guy to say something like, what's happening? I would need him to be more confused for that to be the idea. Because as it's presented in Midnight Motorist, it's just like, oh, fucking normal. Like this kid ran away again. He always does this. Like there's no questions about it, which would be the clue to that, I think.
You obviously can't confirm anything.
Yeah, no, I can't confirm or deny anything, but hopefully we won't disappoint.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, nice. Okay, Evan, so from this interview, you answered the question so passionately. Where's that passion of game development come from? Have you got any...
Yeah, Afton can see spirits, but what does he think he's doing? He'll be sorry when he comes back. And why is he upset with the crying child locking the goddamn door? He's a ghost. Like it's just written so normally, like Afton's so used to it. And then the couch person is written so normally, like they're used to it. It's a fucking ghost. It's such a weird goddamn scenario for it to be written that way.
I'd love to learn more about you.
Here, let me pull up whatever's been sent to me. Okay. Oh, I saw a little bit of this. I'll pull this up on the side right around now-ish. The Blue Sky teasers. Oh, it looks like one's on Blue Sky, one's on. Your hand called. They'd like to stay attached today. Watch your hands. Limbs replaced at employee's expense. That would be funny foreshadowing if we lose a limb, because people have been talking about that. Have you ordered your friends for the mimic? Don't forget about filling out your body type, emergency costume manner. We'll take care of you. Order date, pickup date, purchase name, body type, quantity, requested materials, requested details, special functions, ×2 original fee. That would be interesting. It would be interesting if the confirmed link between the mimic and the old era was Afton to Scott Afton commissioned the Springlock suits, and that was like their first connection. 90 days. Oh, I didn't even. Yeah, 3. This order. Oh, wrong screen. This order form is your receipt. Guarantees that your costume specified as below will be manufactured for you. Present this order from the front desk 3 months from now after your initial order was received from the costume. So yeah, about 90 days. It's interesting. FNaF 2 connection. Anything left in this?
You know, I'm sure everybody else will too.
Sure, at the end of the day, I feel like I'm an artist, and games in general, I think, are the ultimate art form. It has the aesthetics and the narrative. I started my career in animation, and so being able to tell stories is something that I love. I think games do it better than anybody else. That being said, the FNaF community is why I love making FNaF games. Truly, we've worked on a couple different IPs in the past, and the communities there are fine, but nothing compared to FNaF fans. We've been working on this franchise since I wanted one. That was, I don't know, I think we started maybe like 8 years ago now or something. Yeah, and it's just been an amazing experience. So
That's awesome. That's awesome. Thank you so much, Evan. We're going to end it there, guys. I hope
No,
you
oh yeah, FNaF 1.
really enjoyed the interview, and it's hyped you up more for Secret of the Mimic. I'm sure there's lots more hype to come after this interview from Steelwall. So that's
okay. So it looks like we're done with this. So yeah, there's some interesting stuff there. That's I feel like we're still kind of neutral on the Tales games debate. I feel like this, once again, it feels like you can kind of bring it either way with this interview. You can say, oh, I think what I'm going to say, my current stance on it is the Tales books were written to try and fill in gaps and apply to Security Breach, but the series will completely overwrite them if it feels like. Like it's the definition of soft canon. Like it fits whatever the hell it wants to fit. It's applied where it needs to be applied. And that's where I think I'm gonna theorize with, or it's like that's what I think was going on with Tales. Frights is the weird one where I'm like, Frights, if it's canon, it serves as a canonical bridge gap storyline and doesn't really, it explains some things, but it's a much weirder, Tales. With Secret of the Mimic, you can probably get away with not reading Tales aside from GGY to know the kind of history. It helps a lot, but once again, going back to what I was saying, where you can enjoy FNaF games usually just following along the core story. Sure, lore hunters will have to read Tales, but for the common fan, they probably won't need to anymore for the general story. Yeah, I think people rush to literally confirm any stance about anything in the series whenever they get a chance. I feel like this constantly happens with a new release. Is the first week or two something comes out, they find something cool that could potentially have some lore implications, and they're like, he confirmed this. And it, not to say it usually doesn't, but I'll say usually there's more asterisks to it over time. I think Return to the Pit had the most of this lately in terms of recent releases, where when people first found the book, there was this big Cassidy receiver confirmed. But then in context, it's a little rougher to say because it's more about a general birthday party. And also I am currently not only do I think I'm struggling to find a reason the curly haired girl would be Cassidy, because the last book, the direct predecessor book, was the week before, where it's Susie. Let me explain. In the week before, Ralph, when he's around Chica, finds him subconsciously muttering happy birthday, Susie, and Chica flips the fuck out when it happens and destroys her cupcake and storms off. And I feel like that's meant to kind of segue into the Return to the Pit, where it implies there's something traumatic about her birthday, and I feel like that's the intended connection there. because Cassidy's never been portrayed as having curly hair, and Susie has. Susie's not always, but he's usually portrayed as having curly hair. And conversely, the opposite of that is with Andrew. People are like, "Oh, Andrew's deconfirmed because there's only 5 kids in the MCI," which is that was never the confirmed application of Andrew. It was never stated he was the 6th. He was a 6th kid killed with the other 5 kids. And then there's the one kid who's unaccounted for anyway in the book, who you can find earlier on, who's like different from the MCI kid, seemingly. And I think the Cassidy illustration on that page is what makes it stronger. It's not. I mean, we don't know it's an illustration of Cassidy. Like, we just see 3 random kids. It could be any of them. We don't know which one's which. But I do agree that's like that there is an illustration of another girl in that roster, which would confirm Cassidy as a girl, I guess. Which could go into the logbook connection, but the logbook connection, you need to be like, oh, well, this is a girl getting a cake from the puppet, therefore that should be Cassidy. But if that is Cassidy, that would mean the curly-haired girl is absolutely not Cassidy, because that girl does not, because the girl in the logbook does not have curly hair. Yeah, black hair is aligned to the logbook, so that connection kind of works. I was kind of confused about what was being stated. But then, like I said, with Andrew, it's just tricky because, like, there is a kid unaccounted for now in a book that seems to be canon, maybe, question mark. But everyone rushed to say it was confirmed he wasn't canon because there was an argument to be made there with there no longer being 6 kids together into the pit. And this happens a lot with the series in general, but this was just funny that it happened twice in Return to the Pit for a major topic. Oh yeah, and then there's the movies, which fuck with things even further. And the movie novelization fucks with things on top of fucking with things. And yeah, the movie novelization isn't canon. That might just be an error.
Very, very exciting. And yeah, I just can't wait. I can't wait. From what you've said, Evan, about how long the game is and how much exploration there is, and it's very exciting. I can't really speak how excited I am. Like, I really, truly am. And yeah, that will be on the channel, guys. Massive thank you, Steel, for giving me this opportunity to interview the wonderful Evan. Shout out to Aisha and Jessica as well.
So was no there. I was not here. Okay. Andrew is a retcon and by design a paradox. I agree that he is a retcon by technicality, but what I'm talking about in this next video is, as I close all of this down, and I mentioned this in a whole dedicated segment explaining this concept. A retcon does not have to be nonsense. A retcon does not have to contradict the original lore inherently, like in a clumsy way at least. I mean, it can contradict lore. That is kind of part of what Scott seems to define as a retcon. But in this way, he is. I'm sorry, I got caught off my chat. What I'm arguing here is he fits into a mechanic already established in the series to explain why he was not involved. And Spring Bonnie itself, and fitting topic of this video, talks about him being Spring Bonnie. But one of the things explained about Spring Bonnie's existence was it was not referenced in FNaF 1. And FNaF 2, Spring Bonnie wasn't acknowledged there. But then FNaF 3 stated that employees couldn't talk about the Spring Bonnie or the Spring Lock suits really anymore. And that they were sealed away and not really meant to be mentioned. So that retroactively explains why the Mimic, or not the Mimic, why Spring Bonnie is not really present in FNaF 1 and 2, because it's like, yes, it's a retcon to say that there is an extra suit in the back room. By common retcon definition, not Scott's definition. but its addition doesn't break the lore because there's an explanation tacked on to it that explains why it wasn't mentioned. And that's how I think Andrew worked. Andrew is a retcon in that he is a concept not originally present who changes the context of the lore. He is technically retroactive continuity, but he is sort of an example of, like, if I'm corrected in this video, that would explain why he wasn't present, why he doesn't seem to acknowledge the other kids, and why he functions the way he is. So I think there's some cool stuff you can do with that, and hopefully people understand what I'm going for in this video. Because this is one of those times where writing a topic, I really convinced myself of something, and I'm interested to see if people can talk me out of it, or I'm interested to see if people kind of agree with me why I feel like so, I guess I'll say, confident in this topic. There's always like this degree of like, yeah, maybe not, I feel like, with everything I write, but this one I'm just having trouble like finding like a, with puppet stuff, there's always the core argument of like, why not in the novels or movie then? Like, why would we be different and stuff like that, or why would Charlie do that? That's a common example. Or Golden Freddy, you have a lot of the Shatter Victim fans. That's the core argument against that. But even Shatter Victim has the core, like, but that's not how shattering works, arguments and all that. Like, almost every theory has like a baked in reason it wouldn't be the case and why it's not considered just canon. I haven't found that yet for this topic. I mean, I'm assuming that some people are going to say no because there's some preconceived notions about Andrew, and a lot of people don't change their minds about topics when a new idea is submitted. Like, they already have their idea and they're not going to change that. And to go into the topic of who I think is the one you should not have killed, which I should say Vengeful Spirit. It's not that much shorter to say the one you should not have killed, acronym wise, than just Vengeful Spirit. And I'll say I still think there's a reasonable possibility of Cassidy being the Vengeful Spirit. I just would need the books to be deconfirmed before I say Andrew isn't, And if the books are ever deconfirmed continuity-wise, then I go back to Vengeful Cassidy full stop. And if it's ever confirmed the books are 100% in the continuity, then I kind of have to go with Andrew being the Vengeful Spirit, because there's not really a reason not to be, unless we argue they're two separate characters. The Vengeful Spirit and Andrew aren't the separate character, which is a harder argument to make. That's the only way I would argue against it if that was the case. So that's kind of my summary of it. It's like I want to theorize with both in mind for the time being, and to kind of like wade the waters a bit, and before I hard commit to something. I don't know if we'll ever get a confirmation is the weird thing. Like, I don't know what material could be released that would end that debate. What I will say is I feel like in the efforts to create support for both arguments, the Vengeful Cassidy world and the Vengeful Andrew world, in their efforts to corroborate their own respective arguments, I think they made two respective extreme versions that are both inaccurate in their own ways, is what I'm going to argue. I think in the efforts to argue Andrew is the Vengeful Spirit, not Cassidy, information had to be invented to support the idea that Cassidy could not be the Vengeful Spirit. Not just wasn't the Vengeful Spirit, but actively couldn't be. And in that effort, in that like struggle to make that world a reality, they invented a Cassidy who was Michael Brooks 2 Gender Bent Edition. That's how I think I might even word it that exact way towards the end of this video. And likewise, the efforts to argue that Cassidy was 100% the vengeful spirit, a further extreme Andrew, or a further extreme Cassidy was made, who this was their character was being vengeful. This was their point. This was all leading up to Cassidy being the vengeful spirit. And, you know, it's like, I feel like those two respective extremes were made into a much more violent and sadistic Cassidy. And I don't think either of them completely explains the character. Cassidy has to be someone at least capable of thinking about something other than revenge for the survival logbook to exist, but also can't be Michael Brooks or Charlie 2 without making the week before kind of nonsensical, or implying Cassidy cannot control Golden Freddy, which is itself a fascinating implication, you know? And that's kind of what I'm talking about, like Ubi just mentioned, or Obi. It's like, when talking about Cassidy, and this is what I wanted to say in Cassidy fandom erasure, but it didn't really come across, and maybe I didn't have enough nuance in my own argument to really explain this properly. And I think if I were to remake that video, this is what I make the main point is. When I was making that video, I wasn't arguing people were literally forgetting Cassidy existed. I was arguing that the Cassidy that was being inserted in place of the vengeful spirit Cassidy was not accurate either. It was also inaccurate. It was erasing a character's existence to try and justify another character's role more than they needed. Because I feel like the key to the whole Andrew debate was not Cassidy cannot be the vengeful spirit. It is Andrew is the vengeful spirit and the books are canon. And it became Cassidy could not be the vengeful spirit, became the separate focused skew as part of like the proof for it all. And luckily, I think some nuance is slowly creeping back into the topic with stuff like the week before. And hopefully that this will be the norm of like understanding Cassidy is still a distinct character and still maybe not a super peaceful kind spirit exactly. Because I don't think there's a world where that's Cassidy's personality. I'm not sure where Vengeful Cassidy comes from. That's kind of historically that it's one of those you kind of have to be there for it. To kind of get the initial. Vengeful Cassidy more boils down to Vengeful Golden Freddy, and Cassidy is Golden Freddy, is how I explain it. It is how I'd explain how Vengeful Cassidy was born. So there's a lot of Golden Freddy connections. And that it's one of those, like I said, in the efforts to create a Vengeful Cassidy as part of Golden Freddy being the vengeful spirit, like some new personality concepts and ideas were grafted onto support the idea. So that itself is its own historical thing. Why can't be vengeful? The by victim really doesn't make sense in this context. Mainly because it's against William, so we would have to assume he blames William specifically, which is not their expressed dynamic really for confirmed interactions. So it's really not one of those why can't. But it's more of those why would. Cassidy at least has a few why woulds. Golden Freddy is a springlock suit, so you can argue there's some connections there. There's a lot of themes of like istrophobia being the main theme and the mirror of the two springlock suits, which also plays into the Andrew Spring-Bonnie topic of like the idea of like they mirror each other. Golden Freddy's the final shot, still twitching. Golden Freddy's always been the weird outcast. Golden Freddy was the one character not included in FNaF 6, so you can see the inclusion of Golden Freddy here as like the but Henry was wrong or didn't actually stop Golden Freddy. It was the one thing, the one that got away, the one that wasn't accounted for. Golden Freddy's always presented as weirdly powerful and competent, and Charlie we know is involved in Happiest Day, where Golden Freddy's connections, like you could have a bite victim receiver thing to kind of write Golden Freddy out of the thing. So if you have two spirits, that would be like, well, what happened to the other one? There was a lot going into it. But it really revolved around Golden Freddy is the vengeful spirit, and that was kind of the point. And Cassidy was grafted onto that topic. And so it was one of those. It makes sense in its own weird way, I would argue, even if it ends up not being canon. And I think you could very well have made the timeline around that. And I think that's what the movie's going for. I feel like the movie's whole shtick is trying to condense down things to a rewrite. It's kind of like how the Ultimate Universe worked in 2000s for Marvel, where it was a way of condensing things down to a more tightly written version of things. That like condenses a lot more ideas together. Uh yeah. I did actually think about what Trico just mentioned, the idea of Andrew being the idea I thought of, and this is, I don't think it's the case, but it would be a really funky way to introduce the bite victim as a concept and make him important, is after the events of Happiest Day, the bite victim is put back together with the other kids' parts, but it's wrong. He's put together with all the negative parts, like the wrong parts of the other kids. So when he's assembled, instead of being this kid ready to move on and ready to be freed, he's just their hatred of William all amalgamated into one character. I don't think that's the case, but that idea of Andrew slash the bite victim being one character of all the left behind suffering and fear and hatred of William, with nothing of his own personality really retaining, would be an interesting way to handle it. And I don't think that's the case, but it was an idea I toyed with. Yeah, you could see it as like a bite victim as Molten Freddy kind of angle. There's a lot of ideas I've toyed with, like off screen and off stream, that it's like I just don't feel like presenting. Just because there's not enough to really put together. With this one, I'm like, I had a few early connections, and then it kept going, or I kept finding new stuff that could go back to the idea. Yeah. Then there's Shadow Freddy. Shadow Freddy's just fucking weird. I do have to go now. I'm kind of running out of time, but yeah, whatever. We'll see. That's where all of this goes.